Greetings to all the participants of the 12th International Conference on Teaching, Education and Learning organized by Eurasia Research. I'm Dr. Solomon Arulraj David, an Associate Professor of Education and the head of the Masters in Education program at the British University in Dubai. Thanks to the organizers for this opportunity to deliver this keynote. In relevance to the conference theme and relating to the signs of the time, particularly education being disrupted by the pandemic, I have decided to focus my keynote on the topic, future of teaching and learning in the post-pandemic world. The first half of my presentation will pose the top 10 issues we experience in teaching and learning today. In the second half, I will explore the top 10 ideas for the future of teaching and learning in the post-pandemic world. I'm aware that there would certainly be many other important issues and ideas in different countries and contexts. These are the top 10 global issues and ideas relating to teaching and learning, in my humble opinion. The first issue for me is the teaching and learning divide. We live in a world of unequal educational opportunities. We have witnessed now the world's biggest disruption of education due to the pandemic. More than 1.5 million students are not able to attend schools and universities, although some of the digitally privileged ones are able to continue through online learning. These children would now possibly understand the disappointment of those 258 million children and youth who are out of school, according to UNESCO 2019. This also reminds us our commitment to education for all. Double standards in teaching and learning is a second key issue in my view. Privatization has although helped to expand educational access and opportunities for many, it has also created double standards for access to quality education to haves and to have-nots. Even public institutions in many countries have raised tuition costs and in some cases offer self-financing courses under cost-sharing and cost recovery logics. Such trends have affected good quality of teaching and learning practices across all types of educational institutions. Quality educational opportunities for underprivileged and marginalized groups have heavily suffered in such developments, thus confirming Pierre Bourdieu's argument that a son of a manager is 10 times likely to go to university compared to a low-grade employee's son, given the differences in their socio-cultural capitals. His claim that schools reproduce existing inequalities seems valid even today. The third issue is that we take teachers for granted. According to the World Bank, there are about 80 million teachers around the world, from pre-primary to university level teaching. Among them, half of them do not have stable contract or job security. Often they are underpaid, overworking, struggle to pay their bills, and live in challenging conditions. Imagine teachers with such conditions, how would they be able to focus in a good quality teaching to help students to learn. In many cases, they don't have a good platform to make their voices. In some cases, teachers are paid based on their passports. Thus, the respect and value of teachers have been declining to a large extent in many countries in recent times. Young people think twice before choosing teaching profession now. Teacher-student ratio is the fourth key issue I like to highlight. One of the longest debated educational issue is teacher-student ratio. The world average of teacher-student ratio, according to UNESCO, is 1:30. Sometimes it's 1:25 as well. While some of the poorest countries have the highest of the teacher-student ratio with 1:60. Although experts recommend 1:20 as ideal teacher-student ratio, many countries compromise the educational spending at the cost of teachers' comfort and quality teaching learning. I consider technology-driven teaching and learning as the fifth key issue in teaching and learning. We are rapidly shifting to education 4.0, the technology-driven education, which I call the pandemic shift or the paradigm shift. There are both opportunities and challenges of using technology in teaching and learning. The digital divide, tech ability, tech resource are some of the challenges to be aware. Some try to rely heavily on technology these days, while others caution to focus more on pedagogy. Technology is relevant, but pedagogy is more important. We must use technology for our benefit, not as a burden. Ideally, pedagogy must be driving, not technology. The sixth issue I like to highlight is the curriculum curve. There is no unified curriculum across the world today, which makes it difficult to compare learning outcomes in a fair ground for all. We have witnessed curriculum shifts from being skill-based to outcome-based to knowledge-based. There has been also shifts from teacher-centered curriculum to content-driven curriculum, and now to more student-centered curriculum approaches. We are aware of the gap between the intention and the outcome of the curriculum as argued by Stenhouse. Assessment aversion is the next key issue I like to explore in teaching and learning. We live in a testing culture now. There are tests everywhere, many exams that students have to go through. Students are undergoing various tests, which often increases their test anxiety. I noticed these days some children using interesting fun riddle saying that the nation students hate most is examination. Imagine how much they must be hating exams. One of the biggest challenges in our teaching and learning today is that not all of the students who access education are able to complete successfully. Partly, this is due to the unrealistic assessment strategies. Therefore, we need to address success and throughput very carefully. The eighth issue I find is teachers' continuous professional development. Teachers must go through continuous professional development. many schools do not have time and resource to develop their teachers. Most often, they are worried about teachers leaving after they are developed. While we must also ask, what if they stay without developing? It is therefore necessary to encourage periodical, continuous professional developments of teachers. However, it is important to use professional developments meaningfully, that it doesn't hinder their routine works. It is evident that continuous professional developments have significant impact on teachers' performance and students' learning. Teachers' turnover and students' anxiety is the next important issue I like to explore. According to a recent study, 1 in 3 qualified teachers leave their profession in the very first few years. Given the increase in the pressure, workload, and less appreciation at work, the absence of qualified teachers has serious impact on quality teaching and learning. Raising competition for good quality education and raising competition to access good quality higher education and to obtain lucrative jobs have forced students to work harder than ever before. In most cases, schools prepare students for jobs that will not exist in the future. These and other challenges have left teachers and students' well-being at risk, which we must take seriously into account. There's also the other side of the reality that unacceptable behaviors of teachers, parents, and students do affect the well-being of each other. The last but not the least issue is the inconsistency in instructional processes and practices. There's often a lack of consistency and constructive alignment between curriculum, pedagogic processes, and assessment. Often countries and institutions fail to benchmark their local standards and their national standards with the global standards. It is important to observe that some of the national and global ranking tools and criteria are not holistic and realistic. In many cases, learning often is largely bookish and does not relate to real-world problems, which makes the employability of young graduates difficult, as they don't have required industry skills often. As informed earlier, these are not only the key issues in teaching and learning, there might be many other challenges that we have to constantly deal with. The following are the 10 top ideas that I like to explore in relation to the 10 top problems I showed to make teaching and learning more purposeful and productive. The first idea is that we must expand access, equity, and social justice. Experts predict that the economic crisis in the post-pandemic world might leave many jobless. This means parents would not have enough money to send their children to private schools and universities. There would be possibly high enrollment in public schools and universities. Some private schools might be closing. Some private universities could close unattractive courses, which could result in the job loss of teachers and staff. This trend will further slow down access, equity, and social justice, which we have been working for a long time. Countries and institutions must have good strategies to overcome these challenges by reducing and eventually eliminating the gap in gender, race, social class, and urban and rural divide. Nations and citizens must continue to trust in valuing education. Increasing public spending in education, meaningful public-private partnership, safety nets and supporting mechanisms to institutions and individuals are vital to overcome this. And strong regulatory measures must be in place to manage exploitations and mismanagement. Quality enhancement in teaching and learning is the second important idea for the post-pandemic education. Experts such as David Chard from Boston University predicts that expectations of learners are going to be different, most obviously higher in the post-pandemic education. The demand in the job market in the post-pandemic world will be shifting radically. This might pose opportunities and challenges for quality enhancement in teaching and learning. We all must be aware of Lee Shulman's pedagogical content knowledge framework, which was furthered by Mishra and Kauhalas, who added technology and called it TPAC, technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge. I further include moral, empathy, and language dimensions and call it MELT-PAC, as we need to fulfill the moral duty of teaching and be empathic with the instructors and learners, especially in the times of disruption. And language, technology, content knowledge will be supportive for quality enhancement in teaching and learning. Restoring teachers' pride is a third key idea I like to propose. Experts also predict that there will be renewed respect for teachers in the post-pandemic world, as parents themselves have experienced the challenges of teaching in times of the lockdown. Some predict that many teachers might lose jobs due to lack of student enrollment. This means the supply of teachers would increase while the demand for teachers might be falling, leaving the profession less lucrative and attractive. Countries and institutions must make sure to create a culture of supporting teachers, recognizing their hard work, offer rewards and prizes, and make the profession attractive with lucrative packages in order to restore teachers' pride. Healthy classroom is a fourth key idea for effective teaching and learning. It is highly advocated to manage ideal teacher-student ratio for a quality teaching and learning experiences. The bigger the classroom is, the higher the teacher's tasks are. Teachers' tasks must be managed meaningfully for their contribution to quality teaching and learning. Parental engagement must be enhanced meaningfully in order to create a good teacher-parent-student relationship. It is necessary to focus more on humanistic approaches in classroom practices to ensure healthy and conducive environment for teaching and learning. The fifth key idea I like to explore is technology enhanced or technology enabled teaching and learning. We talk about Education 4.0 that comes with a promise of education everywhere, education anywhere, customization, knowledge-based curriculum, research-based learning and teaching, evidence-based assessment. The promise seems attractive, but we must continue to remain cautious and skeptical as we do not know the outcome yet. There are experiments around the world to engage humanoids as teaching assistants, which might be the future reality. Some are excited about this science fiction type of future development, while some others caution about the potential adverse effects. The sad reality is that humans are hooked to electronic gadgets and social media while machines are learning these days. For sure, machines could be programmed to outsmart humans, but humans can always easily unplug machines. Some argue that I would rather like to pay to a human real teacher rather than a humanoid, a robotic teacher. According to UNESCO, there are 69 million teacher shortage around the world. At one hand, we will have to deal with unemployment issues while we want to use artificial intelligence, robotics, and humanoids in education. This will possibly cause huge unrestness due to further job loss. We must therefore be cautious and embrace technology-enhanced teaching rather than technology-driven teaching and learning. Using comparable and competitive curriculum is the sixth key idea for an effective teaching and learning in the post-pandemic world. Bernstein's stratified and differentiated approaches, classification and framing are very instrumental to deploy appropriate curriculum to learners of different ages. In an increased globalized world, curriculum must be able to create comparable learning outcomes due to the mobility of learning and mobility for jobs. Curriculum in the post-pandemic world, therefore, must be competitive and current, as the expectations will be higher, while it must also be realistic and feasible. Experts, therefore, advise for research-led curriculum and advocate to engage teachers in curriculum design. The seventh most important idea is the use of evidence-based assessment. We must reduce the ambiguity around assessment. Students must be clearly informed about the assessment criteria. Experts advocate the use of evidence-based assessment, which is strongly linked to the learning objectives. There must be clear constructive alignment between curriculum objectives and outcomes. This could only be achieved with careful pedagogical processes and constructive feedbacks that would be linked to the learning progress. Teacher professionalism is the eighth key idea I propose. Beyond continuous professional development, teachers must embrace this as a culture that would lead to teacher professionalism. Schools must continue to invest in their teachers to enhance their professionalism. Richard Branson says, to train people well enough so they can leave, but treat them well enough so they don't want to. The ninth key idea is the well-being of teachers and students. We have recently become more aware of the issues around teachers and students' well-being. Teachers' tasks must be managed effectively. They have their family as well. Parents and students must realize that there is life after studies and take learning enjoyable. Students and universities must make sure that teachers and students are safe and happy in order to engage in enjoyable teaching and learning processes. Inclusive work environment, appreciating diversity is vital for healthy organizational behavior and dynamics. We must therefore promote positive education in the post-pandemic world. That is the need of the hour. Leading instructions is the 10th key idea I'd like to explore. Instructional leadership by both instructors and institutions is essential in leading the use of appropriate and authentic curriculum, effective pedagogical processes, and valid assessment techniques. Instructional leadership play a pivotal role in leading instructors, instructions, learners, and learning. It is therefore very important that instructional leadership make sure that there is necessary freedom in teaching and learning for both instructors and learners. I'm sure these and other important ideas would continue to support and sustain quality teaching and learning both in schools and universities. I'm convinced that teaching and learning is central to schooling, and therefore schools and universities must continue to support and sustain quality teaching and learning. Thank you for listening to me. Let's continue to reflect in the best interest to enhance our teaching and learning practices. Thank you, and good luck with the conference.